So there's a chewing gum you can get in Germany called Spunk. And so I said to him, it's very useful it's called this because it reminds you not to swallow. And my name is Jo Brand. I'm here because I've just written a book called Born Lippy, How to Do Female. That is, of course, very tongue-in-cheek because I'm probably the least female person you'll ever meet, probably. And I'm going to be talking today about my life in objects. And I was quite tempted just to have 5 massive bars of chocolate on the table, but I've made a bit of an effort and I've brought some rather, well, let's start with an unsavoury thing. This is a jumper, look at it. It's even got like a big stain on it, which I was trying to get off there. And you're looking at that jumper thinking, oh my God, was that made by someone who didn't know how to knit? Yes, me. I actually made this jumper myself. It took forever. I made it when I was at university, and I had quite a grim kind of teenage period from about 16 to about 18. Where things were very difficult at home. I got thrown out of home. I kind of struggled a bit emotionally. So when I got to university, I just thought, oh God, what am I going to do with myself? I hate knitting. I hate myself. So I'm going to knit something. So I knitted that, and it's rubbish, but I used to wear it a lot when I went out. And I used to get so drunk that I didn't care what I was wearing, so that was all right. But to some extent, it symbolises to me a sort of a kind of metamorphosis from quite an unhappy teenager into a mature, useful member of society. Because by the time I'd finished my nursing course, I was almost completely sober, and I was a qualified nurse, and I had a 2-1 degree, which is not the boozer's degree, which is a 2-2. So I was all round proud of myself, and this kind of really makes me think back to those days. I do not knit now, although I have a friend who is a massive knitter, and she's been trying to persuade me for months to take up knitting again. And we've come to a compromise, and that's that she's going to knit a jumper for me. Now, I've also brought quite an ancient brain with me, and I have to confess, and they can call the police if they want, but I actually took this from the School of Nursing at the Maudsley Hospital, and to some extent for me it kind of really symbolises how since I was much younger the attitude towards mental health and towards the way that the brain functions has changed. Things are moving forward. I'm not saying they're by any means where they need to be, but things are getting better. And I also brought this because I think it symbolises something to me which I feel is very important if you're a woman, that you use your brain, really, because a lot of women in the past have kind of got by, particularly if they're lovely looking, on just not really having to bother about anything else. Education does give you power. I mean, again, there's a saying, isn't there, knowledge is power, and it is absolutely true. As a child, I came from the sort of family where, as a family, we would discuss issues in the news and talk about sort of history and have debates. And I used to tell my friends about this, and they used to be really shocked because their mums only ever talked about cooking. So, my mum was a kind of early feminist, I suppose, who felt it was very important to educate herself too. So I think women should educate themselves because that's a very important feature of us as women, and it puts us in a better position to take over the world. Right, I brought this with me because this is my favourite poetry book. As you can see, it is quite battered and well read because I did actually buy it new, and it's called Lifelines, and it's rather hilariously the subtitle is an anthology of poems chosen by famous people. And what I kind of like about choices made by well-known figures is I think you can really tell a lot about the person by which poem they've chosen. And I think you can always tell if people are kind of kind as well, from their choices, rather than, we all know there's quite a few monsters wandering around showbiz. Believe you me, I've met loads. And so it's actually reassuring to see that some people that I really like have chosen poems which I also really like. And actually my favourite poem is actually in here, and it's called A Man I Knew, and it's by a poet called Brendan Kennelly, or Kennelly, and it's in memory of the poet Patrick Kavanagh, who was famously a really curmudgeonly old Irish git. And I love curmudgeonly old poets. So I want no easy grave, he said to me, where those who hated me can come and stare, slip down upon a servile knee, muttering their phony public prayer. In the wilds of Norfolk I'd like to lie, no commemorative stone, no sheltering trees, far from the hypocrite's tongue and eye, safe from the praise of my enemies. I just think that's really, really powerful, because in this job that we do, there's an awful lot of, people sort of praising you to your face, then slagging you off behind your back. And so I'm always very wary if people that I don't like come up to me and say they think I'm great. It's true. People have told me that I've been called a national treasure. That's ridiculous. And I think what's happened is, first of all, when I started up, I was a kind of gobby, man-hating radical feminist. And then I got married. So a lot of the kind of more right-wing tabloids went, oh, a man has tamed her. And now we can love her as a national treasure. And I think that national treasure thing also means that you've been slightly kind of disempowered, because if you're a national treasure, you can't go around telling people to fuck off. And I still want to do that, really. So I'm not a national treasure. I'm a national disgrace. And fuck off, all you people that call me a national treasure. Okay, one of my objects are these boots, which I absolutely love. And I've had them since 1992. I was given them by a lovely guy called Phil Wilkinson Blake, who organised a charity fashion show at Loughborough University to raise awareness of HIV/AIDS. And so what I love about them is they're kind of massively chunky. They've got steel toe caps. I don't know if you can see those. And actually a lot of men say to me, were they always like that, or have you kicked a lot of things? And I always go, yes, I've kicked a lot of bollocks, but actually I haven't, because they were always like that. But I think they're quite intimidating, and if you're watching me on stage, they are at eye level. And my husband, who I got married to in 1997, every so often will spirit them away and get them resold, so they kind of keep regenerating themselves. So I'm hoping to wear them in my coffin. Okay, and I brought this picture along with me. This is a picture of me and my brothers, and it was probably, I think, round about the mid to the end of the 1980s. When he got married, it was in Germany, and that's what that's my little brother there, even though he's huge, and that's my big brother. We'd gone over there for his wedding. And I kind of feel, as children, because of my dad being such a difficult character to live with, we were kind of really close with each other, because I think kids do that, to sort of try and protect themselves against what is a malign influence in your family, which I think is kind of very sad if you're frightened of one of your parents, but we were, because my dad was very unpredictable when he was younger. I think both of my brothers have had a big influence on me, because they're both really, really funny and had great senses of humour. They were terrible joke players. They used to play jokes on me all the time, and as the only girl in the family, I used to get it, and I occasionally got my own back, because once we were playing in the woods and I trod in a wasp's nest and all the wasps came out, and my brothers ran one way and I ran the other, and they chased my brothers and stung them really badly. So, you know, it's not very nice, is it, when you're 8 to think, well, hey, my brother's been stung really badly, but I'm afraid I did think that. Sadly, my little brother died of cancer in 2015, so it's particularly great to have this really lovely photo of us all together. I think I put something in the book about it, that I kind of dealt with it very badly because I had to go to work, you know. And I think if you truly are experiencing kind of grief, you can't really do anything. But I think most of us in this country, and probably all around the world, people who aren't in cultures that encourage you to express yourself emotionally, just all deal with it very badly. And there's a lot of people walking around who are actually either quite depressed or very angry, because that was one element of grief that I found like a really big surprise. It just made me really, really angry. And there are people that haven't dealt with it walking around, and I think I would say to those people, don't do what I did, do what I tell you to, and try and sort yourself out, because it's a horrible thing to carry around with you. Right, this here's my final object. It's a radio, very straightforward. And the reason I picked radio is because it's just very important in my life. I have the radio on all night, and I find it kind of a nice, comforting thing to sort of wake up to if I wake up in the night. And there are certain shows that I love on the radio that are kind of on really early in the morning, and because I am post-menopausal and I didn't go down the HRT route, I tend to wake up about 4:30, and I don't like to watch telly when I've woken up at that time. I just like to listen to someone blaring on, which at 5 o'clock, if you're interested, people that wake up early, on Radio 5 Live, there's a very, very good programme on economics for morons, and I really like that because they tell you what's going on and they don't patronise you, but you do get some idea. And also I have the radio on a lot in the day when I'm working, and I quite like listening to radio that really annoys me. Radio interviewers, and there's quite a lot of them on Radio 4. I won't say their names. You know who they are. They're on in the morning, and they're a bit fond of the sound of their own voice, some of the interviewers. And it's kind of as if they're saying, I'm the star of this show and you're a mere little politician, so wait till I've finished asking this very complicated question. I love being on the radio. I used to do a lot. I had my own show actually on BBC London for quite a long time, and they let me loose on politicians. It was hilarious. And the other thing was I used to play music sort of in between interviews, and I never realised quite what a child I was, because almost every song I picked inadvertently had swearing in it. So we would put a song on, and then I would think, oh no, there's the F word coming up. So I'd have to go to the producer, tip it, quick. And for some reason that happened a lot of times with me. So I must be a lot more, I realise I'm childish, but I'm kind of much more childish than I thought. It is actually quite nice soft wool. Other than that, there's nothing to recommend it at all. Oh, sure. I'm only joking. Do you want me to say that again without saying something so awful in it? The worst thing that's ever happened to me was I used some hair dye without doing a patch test. I got kind of pus squirting out of my head.